bronze and copper and silver. Oh my. Welcome back to another video. This really popped when I saw it. That to me is a monster increase. Again, this book got hot. This book is ready to go higher. So let's jump right into it. We are back today with another statue review from Diamond Select Toys. Without further ado, let's get into the review. What is going on YouTube? This is Lawrence over at Mighty Comics and Collectibles, and I want to thank you guys again for joining me for another Hot 10 breakdown of the week. If you guys aren't familiar with this one, I take the 10 hottest comics according to the Key Collector app, and I break them down for you guys, letting you know which I'd be buying, and of course which I'd be staying away from. But before we get started, I want to thank you guys for getting me to 6,000 subs, and a special thanks to all my members out there. If you're interested in membership, we have a $1.99 version and a $4.99 version. You guys cannot miss out. With that said, thank you to all the subs out there. Hit that sub button if you're not a current subscriber of the channel. Smash that like button. Of course, check out all the new merch I have for sale down below. You will not regret it. Now, with that said, let's get into these books. Starting off the list this week is a copy of Amazing Spider-Man number 601 and this classic Mary Jane cover by J. Scott Campbell and a CGC 9.8 just sold last week for only $550, up 15% over the average. I will say this, J. Scott Campbell is one of my favorite modern artists out there. However, I don't want to spend over $500 for a 9.8 copy of this one. And you know, if I'm going to buy a modern book, it's got to be a 9.8. However, I will throw a caveat out there. I do love the cover. I want to own the book. So if I could find one, a raw copy for like $75 or less, I pull the trigger. Other than that, I'm staying away. At number 9 this weekend, back on the list, is a massive Silver Age key. It is a copy of Amazing Spider-Man number 1 and the first appearance of Spider-Man in his own title. This is also his second overall appearance. This is also the first appearance of the Chameleon and J. Jonah Jameson. And a CGC 3.5 just sold the prior week for a whopping $12,200, up 19% over the average. We also had a CGC 1.0 sale for only $5,600, up 10% over that average. You guys know this. I love Silver Age comics, and I definitely love Silver Age Amazing Spider-Man, and this is the one that started off in that series. I'll always be a buyer of this book. It has really gotten crushed over the past couple of years. Has it bottomed? I'm not really too sure, but if you can't go out and get an AF-15, this is the next best thing. Back on the list at number 8 this week is a copy of Avengers number 57 and the first appearance of Vision, and a CGC 8.5, a super high grade copy of this one, just sold the prior week for $1,500, up an insane 74% over the average. We also had a CGC 3.5 sale for only $232, up 8% over the average. Man, a 74% increase in just a short period of time. What the hell is going on with this book? I'm not spending that high amount on this key. However, I will say this, you can find a mid-grade for under GPA. I'll always be a buyer of this one. I love this Silver Age red cover. I do think it's a decent buy in mid-grade. High grade, I don't want to spend that kind of money on this book. You guys know why. At number 7 this week is a new book to this list. It is a copy of Fantastic Four number 244 and the first appearance of Frankie Ray as the second Nova and becomes the Herald of Galactus. You guys know why this book is on this list. Right now, there's a big rumor out there that Frankie Ray is going to be the Herald of Galactus in the MCU. I am definitely not buying it, I'll say that. Either way, we had a CGC 9.8 sold last week for $400, up 15% over the average. This book is pure spec out there right now. That's why it's on this list. And you know how I feel about spec. I'm staying away from it. This book is not worth it. Hey, I'm not saying if you want to go out there and buy a super cheap copy and flip it, be my guest. But if we're buying books straight on price, I'm definitely staying away. Coming in at the 6th spot is some more Bronze Age goodness. It is a copy of Tomb of Dracula number 10 and the first appearance of Blade. And we just had a CGC 9.6, a whopping sale of $10,000, up 9% over the average. We also had a CGC 4.0 sale for $675, up 7% over the average. This book has really come down in price over the past couple of years. The Blade script I heard is an absolute mess over in Marvel, but I will say this, This is a long-term Bronze Age key if you want to buy it right here. I'm not buying a 9.6 for 10 grand, but hey, if you can go out and get a 4.0 or 5.0 and get it under GPA and you're willing to hold it long-term, I say go ahead. I like this one. I've always loved this book. Staying in the Bronze Age at number 5 is one of my all-time favorite covers. It is a copy of Amazing Spider-Man number 129 and the first appearance of the Punisher in this iconic cover by John Romita Sr. and Gil Kane. This is also the first appearance of the Jackal, and a CGC 9.6 just sold last week for $8,950, up 10% over that average. We also had a CGC 8.0 sale for $2,369, up again 10% over the average. I used to own this book in an 8.0, and I gotta say, I think I paid right around $1,400 for it. Ended up selling it for $3,000, and now it's down under again for just under $2,400. I think at the high it was almost $4 grand. Right now we're approaching 50% off on this book. I love it. There's a lot of copies out there, but if you want to hold this book for the long term and you're an Amazing Spider-Man fan and even a Punisher fan, it's a must-own book. So yes, I will always be a buyer of this book. Just try to get yourself a deal on it. Back on the list at number 4 this week is the King of the Copper Age. It is a copy of Spawn number 1 and the first appearance of Spawn in comics. And a CGC 9.8 just sold again last week for $229, up an insane 40% over that average. You guys know there are a million copies out there of this book. I love the first appearance of Spawn. I think it's a classic issue, but again, I don't want to spend $200 and something on a 9.8 copy. This one, if you just want to own the book, maybe you find one in lower grade. You still can get one probably like a 9.0 or 9.2 for really, really cheap. There's no need to spend up for a 9.8 just because there's so many freaking copies out there. But hey, if you're a purist and you want the best copy out there, it's got to be that 9.8. But regardless, I'm not doing it. Also back on the list this week at number 3 is a copy of G.I. Joe Real American Hero number 1 and the first team appearance of G.I. Joe. And we just had a CGC 9.8 sell last week for $871, up 2% over the average. I'm going to tell you what I said last week when this book was on the list. I'd rather own the mint on card vintage toy figures from way back in the day. Somebody actually let me know that actually the comic G.I. Joe number 1 came before the show and actually came before the figures. I did not know that. Regardless, I still rather own the figures than this issue right here. I do not think it's worth it. I think it's too much money to spend on these. The mint on card figures, you can find them. They're really, really expensive and definitely a better investment for the long term. Back on the list at number 2 is the King of Comics. It is a copy of Wolverine number 1 and the first appearance of Wolverine in his own solo title. This is also the first appearance of Yukio, and we just had a CGC 9.8 sell last week for $700, up 4% over the average. We also had a CGC 9.4 sale of $200, up 2% over the average. Why is it number 2 if it's only 2% over the average? You know why? Because a ton of copies out there are being sold right now. I said it last week. If you just want to own the book just to have in the collection, definitely get yourself a nice high-grade copy of this one. Maybe a raw one so you don't have to spend the crazy amount of money these books are going for right now. I don't want to spend high dollar volumes on high printed books. To me, it's just not a great way to go ahead and collect. But hey, you make your decision. But for me, I cannot do it. And finally, at the top spot, and again, back on this list, is a copy of X-Men number 130 and the first appearance of Taylor Swift. No, it's the first appearance of Dazzler. This is also the second appearance of Kitty Pryde and Emma Frost. And we just had a CGC 7.0 newsstand copy sold for $190, up 9% over the average. We also had a CGC 9.2 direct edition sell for $340, up a crazy 42% over the average. I can't believe this book is back on this list. Taylor Swift is super hot right now, and so is this book. If you can find it for like $150 or less, pick it up. Other than that, I definitely would not be wasting my money on this one unless you can get it for cheap. Hope you guys enjoyed the video this week. Some more great books finally on this list. We had a King of the Silver Age book. We had some great Bronze Age books. But when we're talking about the best buy of the week, silver will always trump bronze, in my opinion. And that's why it's a copy of Amazing Spider-Man number 1 and the first solo title of Spidey, and actually his second appearance. I think it's a great time to buy this book if you can't go out and get an A15. That's what I've always said, and it's come down just enough, in my opinion, in low grade if you want to snatch it up. Hope you guys enjoyed enjoyed the video this week. Again, I want to thank all the members out there for supporting the channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and I'll talk to you guys soon.